Maya, you've talked, both in your presentation here, you stress the various levels at which we communicate, which we speak, both what is manifestly enunciated as well as the illocutionary force or intent of our utterances. But I think what you also seem to be talking about is a quality of transformative listening.
Yeah.
But we can go into that later. I think just as we are unable possibly to understand what other species are saying to us because we don't have a medium of translation or comprehension, to develop this transformative and potentially self-transformative way of listening. And that's not as easy as it sounds. So I'm going to take those thoughts to Bernd. And could I invite you to speak now, Bernd?
Okay. Oh, this is gone now? Sorry. Okay. Okay. I just want. Yeah. I have 3 points. I want to speak about the past, who is to some extent the present. Then I speak about the present, and then what can futures be? I mean, it's basically, and this in 5 to 8 minutes. No, when I woke up this morning, I saw the Times of India, and I saw this wonderful article about the penguin here in the zoo in Bombay, and the death of one of the childs born here in the zoo. And there are many aspects in this article which refer to the discussions we had the last days. The one aspect is, and of course I should start with a general statement that, and this I think was a very important point by Ranjit yesterday, that of course what we understand from nature is constructed. It's always constructed, and let's say the reflection on it is how is this construction done and what does it mean. And the second point, which I think is quite important, is whatever we say about nature has implications for what we are. I think this is, so to say, the backdrop of what I'm saying now. So there are different aspects in this article which refer to aspects we discussed in the last days. The one is how nature is constructed in this case, because the birth of this one child penguin was related to Independence Day, and was also clearly said that the chief Sena leader was asking for bringing the penguins to Bombay. So there was a kind of political context to bringing these penguins to Bombay. Then what is interesting, another reference is it's also a global project, because the penguins are coming from Korea. But the penguins themselves are Humboldt penguins. And the Humboldt penguins originally have their habitat in South America. And they are to some extent related to German colonial history, so to say, by Humboldt. Colonial history, I say, because in Germany, people, especially from some institutions, would stand up now and would say, we did not have a colonial history in Latin America. But I think this is we don't have the time to explore that. I would say also the Humboldt enterprise in Latin America was to some extent also colonial, and not just knowledge production as people are claiming. So what you have here is an infrastructure, namely the zoo, who constructs what nature is. And it relates it on the one side to scientific developments, because there are a lot of people trying to take care of the penguin child to survive. They failed, of course. It's relating it to a political context up to the point of identity of the nation, I would say, or some aspects of that. And then, of course, it's a construction what nature is. And we all know that this kind of infrastructure, such as zoos, museums, and so on, started to develop relevance at the point, especially in the Western world, where the relationship, the traditional relationship to nature was going. So you have to construct nature. And the question, of course, arises, why are these constructions necessary in the modern world? Why do we to have a kind of zoo which gets the front page of the Times of India with this message? I said this is the past because, of course, the construction of zoos is not a new one, it's a quite old one, or at least it's part of the colonial project, I would say. And as I said too, it says something about nature, it says something about people too. Coming to the present, and my point is exactly that. What are the infrastructures we have to analyze to understand where the we are in? And I would like to give you an example from Germany, but it's going to operate worldwide. That is an example of Amazon, who has a new experimental camp, so to say, in Germany. As you know, Amazon is bringing in the goods from all over the world to this place, and then it is distributing it in Germany. And what they are doing, they still have workers there who are taking the goods and bringing it to a certain place, and then it leaves the, what is the English word? Distribution, kind of warehouse, yeah, warehouse situation, yeah, sorry. In this warehouse. What is interesting is they are bringing in the goods and they do not categorize them, but it's a complete chaos of goods. And the question is, how do the workers find the right good to bring it to the right place? And there they work with e-bots. Each of the workers has an e-bot. So with the e-bot, he is related to the central system who is controlling and guiding the workers. So what they do there is, as I said, there's a kind of experimental space for them. Each worker works completely individualistic. There is no communication needed to the others because it's just related to the system. This is very nice even for some German politicians because the refugees from the Arab world, they can work there. They do not have to know the German language. So it's also kind of solving of the problem of migration to Germany to some extent on the labor level. And the system, they are tuning the system, so to say, day by day, up to the point to make it more efficient, as I say, up to the point where the system even can take care of demonstrating workers. When there's a demonstration and they take time out, the system is getting the right people to replace them at the same time. So for me, this is an image of the situation we are in, because of course this kind of electronic infrastructure is for Amazon in the future not going to work just in Germany in this one warehouse, but the idea is to employ it worldwide. So that you have worldwide a situation where individuals are working and they are just related to the central system. To some extent, it's an image of our world too, because what I tried to explain at the beginning in my primary lecture was that via Facebook, via being connected with the digital world, each minute or each hour at least, these machines are digging out data from our behavior, recollecting it, selling it, and recategorize our worldviews by doing that. So this is the situation we are in at the moment, I would say. And I was very happy that Akeel, at the end of the last panel, referred to the issue of capitalism as a major frame to look at this situation, because I think one major insight of the Anthropocene idea is really this relationship between different scales, that you cannot understand a local situation without seeing these global infrastructures at work. Neither you understand the global infrastructures in their logic when you do not know local situations. So there is a completely intertwinedness of global, planetary, and local, regional developments going on. And we have to develop conceptual means to deal with this intertwinedness. I think we are either very good on the local level, or we are very good on the infrastructure level, but the intertwinedness of the phenomena, there we are not really good at. I think this is a conceptual challenge we have to deal with. I mean, for example, when you speak about digital capitalism, I have one number here, because numbers in digital capitalism plays a role. There are $3 trillion which are on the money exchange market sent around the world each day. So you can imagine what it means to allocate, reallocate this money in different kind of landscapes of the world, and understand the ruptures they can produce, at least, and they are producing in the situation. Having said all this, I only want to make 2 points as far as the future is concerned. One point is to the remark to the concept of future. Normally we think, or quite often, people think futures are starting in 10 years, 20 years, and 100 years. I think the challenge, and also Akeel spoke about that, I think to some extent, is to see that the future, what is coming, lies in the shadow of the present. So we have to study the shadows of the present, let's say the peripheries, the small things which are not already, let's say, controlled by the system, in order to work on them, as also Akeel said in a discussion, to scale them up to some extent, to look in which way they can develop importance in the future. And having said this all, and being a director of a cultural institution, I want to make one remark to institutions. Because there was a lot of discussions and criticism against institutions in the last 20 years, or 30 years even, 3 decades. And a lot of this criticism was correct. Institutions are stagnant, that they are conservative, that they are not reflecting the situation we are in. Yeah, I think all this was right, and to some extent it's still right. But of course the attack against institution was not just an intellectual or artistic attack by artists, but it was also a neoliberal attack. The neoliberal system, and therefore I brought also the Amazon example, they want individuals on the other side. They do not want the institutions, because institutions may have the power to translate, to some extent at least, the shadows into something more consistent. And and of course, we need new institutions who are doing that, which are doing that. I mean, it's not just going on the way institutions worked in the 20th century. So we have to develop new institutions, but new institutions are important because they are the only possibility, to some extent at least, or not the only possibility, but they are one instrument, I would say, to face these infrastructural challenges on the planetary and global level.
Thank you, Bernd. Amar, could I invite you to come in on this? Especially also because speaking of the shadow of the present as the long shadow of the present, you were saying at some point at the end of the deliberations yesterday, you were reminding us of the many pockets of resistance that exist and which we sometimes don't look at because we are overcome by the landscape of catastrophe.
In the context of looking at the future and in the context of responding to the present situation, I think it's probably in the experience of life and the experience of oppression, the experience of joy, of resistance, and in the sharing of this experience that we find common alliances, friendships, and strength to respond. Even the kind of strength, the nature of response, I think comes from sharing of the experience of living, fighting, being happy, being broken, and so on. Continuing from, just responding to the comment that you had made about the non-forensic with reference to what I had said earlier. In a way, what I was trying to do was to respond to, alienation, yes, but it's sometimes even hard for me to understand what alienation itself means. I don't even know what it means sometimes. I assume that this is what I am, if that's what they're talking about, in that sense. So I found it easier to relate to, say, attenuation. So I felt attenuated. Mm-hmm. And if I am attenuated and if I do not know how I am attenuated, then I am at a loss because I do not know what I am not receiving or knowing. And then how do I proceed? So in that sense, the proposition of multiple forms of evidence or poetry as evidence formally in a trial, addressing a crime, to comprehend the crime, takes you off into a kind of deeper sense of the scale and the meaning and the implication of loss, leading to a certain kind of understanding, allowing therefore to live and act and so on, was also a possible route into being able to listen to what I think I don't have the sense for, of being able to listen not just to what I'm unable to understand about human existence, but actually also of trees and species and spiders and plants and so on. I do not even know how to listen or how to connect or how to read. So this possibly allows me to develop some tools to be able to grasp that. However, in the whole question of the sharing of experiences, it is also quite clear that there is no testimony that is fully adequate and complete. So in the knowledge that testimonies are fluid, and actually in the fluidity of testimonies, over a period of time, there is a certain kind of understanding in it. That kind of understanding for me is how I would respond would like to respond, say, to the present crisis. Therefore, to conclude, or at least to try and conclude, I have three different types of points to make. And kind of cryptically, just to be in time. One of them is to remember Colonel Pratap Save. Colonel Pratap Save was a military officer, an Indian Army military officer who retired and went back to his hometown in Umbergaon on the border of Gujarat and Maharashtra, son of Bhaskar Save, I don't know his mother's name. He was assassinated on the 20th of April 2000. Being one of the most educated men in that area, he became the leader of a fisher folk farming community who were protecting their entire ecosystem, the coastline, and so on and so forth from, actually I think maybe Unical, an American Gujarat collaboration port. And he was assassinated and killed in custody, in police custody. So this is not a Maoist, this is not an activist, this is not some, anti-national, etc., etc. This is, so essentially, why I am bringing Colonel Save in here is to commemorate, to remember, to just to refer to the need that in our discourse, in our response, we cannot forget somebody like Colonel Save. On any day. So Colonel Save actually has to be in all our textbooks or whatever we write about it. So so my first point actually is that if one gets into the day-to-day struggle or resistance of any community or individual against the onslaught that we have been talking about, this complete crazy onslaught that we have spoken in detail in the last 1.5 days, that struggle is mind-bogglingly inspiring. It may be a losing struggle, it may be a victorious struggle. But on a daily basis, if you look at how, for instance, even people refer to the anti-POSCO struggle and one of the victorious struggles, it's 10 years. And just to see how they fought on a daily basis itself is so essentially, my first point is about memory of resistance, memory of failure, of success, the experience of fighting this. If we forget and let this experience go by, then there is no way we can imagine the future, respond to the future, or even find a way to, because there's a lot in that, and that in some way needs to be brought in continuously in every form. My second point is that, I'm not a botanist, and nor am I like a design specialist, but I do know that actually nature or natural organs or plants or organisms are incredibly fascinating from the point of view, also apart from all the other things that they do, incredibly fascinating from the point of view of their shapes. And in the way these shapes change as well, and how they appear, disappear, regenerate, suddenly survive sometime, and all of that. There are many, many methods in which these shapes, fascinating shapes, exist, and they could and regenerate and travel. So it's just it's just a thought, which is that institutional forms, how do we conceive of an institution? What is the structure of the institution? How does it exist? How does it live? Actually, it may be possible to find beautiful structures and methods and frameworks and teaching from just observing how several natural organisms exist. Those structures could become models for institutions, and one could live in them, and then those structures could be beautifully fluid, not necessarily top-heavy, not always visible, does not need to be protected, can appear, disappear, camouflage, change, regenerate, be many things. My last point actually is that, see, when one is sinking, one could feel screwed. But also when one is sinking, it's a fantastic opportunity, because it frees you also. then you can think anything you want because you are going down. You can do anything you want, you can take your leap of imagination, you could take a shot at something that you would normally not take a shot if you were not sinking. So, and it's not often that I get to spend a day and a half with such a bunch of nice people. I mean, there's been no really strong demonstration of ego from anybody in the last 1.5, 2 days. There's no strong narcissism, self-love. There's nobody attacked anybody, nobody destroyed anybody. Everybody is really nice and concerned, intelligent, vast amount of experience, so much knowledge. So I've got a little smaller suggestion for the future. Like how about taking a shot at the elections that are coming up? So, yeah, like how about like figuring out some form of alliances that we don't have to get into each other's hair, where we have a lot of money but we have no funding, where we have an organization which doesn't have a name, where you can't really pinpoint who is running it and where it is running from. And let's all the incredible amount of wealth of understanding that was just put forth here in the last 1.5 days, even in Himanshu's PowerPoint and Kanchi's, I know there's a lot that she didn't speak about, just even the two of you. And let's just create some chaos. Let's take it out into this. We've got 3 elections coming up. We've got they're probably going to spin a surprise on us and bring the national elections into, let's form a political party like a Green Party, which is not a party. I mean, we are actually all individually quite resourceful people. So let's find a way to just bring this understanding out into the public, into the political parties, into whatever realms of public consciousness. I'm not saying we're going to win. I'm not going to saying that he's not going to win or something like that. But I'm saying let's give it a shot and see what comes out.